Hi, welcome back guys. This is your professor, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Mother Was Female Kurama. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic.
Konoha had a wonderful day. Today marked the 8th anniversary of the defeat of Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox. On this day 8 years ago, the 4th Hokage sacrificed himself to stop the nine-tailed fox from destroying the village. Today was a day for reflection and celebration. Fireworks could be seen and heard throughout the night sky. There were parades and parties all over the village. Except for one person, it was a happy day. A small figure hid in the shadow of a dumpster in one of Konoha's many alleys. He was quite petite for his age. He turned 8 today, but he didn't look a day older than 5. The figure was dressed in a tattered and dirty bright orange jumpsuit, the color of which had been dulled by dirt. The child was small and lacked meat on his bones. He sat curled up behind a dumpster, sobbing quietly to himself. Naruto Uzumaki was the name of this person. Adults refer to him as the demon child. Some people could be heard conversing as they passed through the alley. The demon wasn't at home, one woman stated. It must have wised up this year, a man said, but we'll find it soon enough, and when we do, I swear I'll finish it off this time. Before the people's voices and footsteps faded into the distance, there were yells of approval. Naruto was aware that they were discussing him. Since he could remember, some of the villagers had formed a mob and hunted him down every year. They would beat him half to death if they caught him. His unique ability to heal was the only reason he was still alive. This year was no exception. Naruto knew what would happen if they discovered him, so he went into hiding. The boy whimpered and cried silently to himself. What did I do to make them hate me so much? And why do they treat me this way? It's because of me, said an echoing voice around Naruto. Naruto tensed. Someone was talking to him, which meant they had found him. To protect himself, Naruto hunched over and placed his hands over his head. He waited for the pain, which never arrived. He raised his head after a few moments. He couldn't see anyone else in the alley. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm not going to hurt you, the voice said once more. Naruto took a look around. Where are you? He asked, still keeping his voice low so as not to attract unwanted attention. Allow me to demonstrate. Naruto's world abruptly went dark. When Naruto regained consciousness, he leapt to his feet, ready to flee. He looked around and realized he was no longer in the alley. He was stuck in some kind of sewer. Although there was water on the ground, his feet did not feel wet. A wall had pipes running along it. His gaze followed the pipes until he noticed the massive cage to his side. It was massive. In all, he stared at it. It had to be 100 feet tall. He peered inside the cage, but all he saw was darkness. Naruto squinted his eyes, and after a brief moment, something moved. The figure approached the cage. Naruto could see its features as it approached. It was a massive fox with deep red fur. Its eyes were blood red and slit. It swung 9 long tails behind it. The fox towered over Naruto and stood about 50 feet tall. Despite its intimidating size, Naruto couldn't sense any murderous intent emanating from the creature. He didn't believe it would harm him. He felt secure. The fox entered the cage and sat down. It just stood there staring at Naruto for a moment. Naruto was taken aback when he saw the giant fox crying. Its muzzle was dripping with tears. It raised one of its tails and wiped the tears from its eyes. When it was finished, it finally spoke. Hello Naruto, I'm so happy I finally get to speak with you, it said softly. Who? What are you? Naruto inquired, his arms wrapped around his belly and looking at the enormous thing with trepidation. I am the nine-tailed fox, Kyuubi, it declared emphatically. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he remembered the lesson he'd learned in school. But I thought the 4th Hokage destroyed you. How can you still be alive? He exclaimed. Naruto, demons are too powerful to kill, so the 4th Hokage sealed me into a baby. And that baby was you, Kyuubi said, pausing to give Naruto time to process what it had said. Naruto's shocked expression quickly turned to anger. He accused the Kyuubi with his finger. You're the reason the village hates me, it's all your fault. Their rage is directed at you, not at me, Naruto said with contempt in every word. A new set of tears burst from the fox's eyes, much to Naruto's surprise. I'm so sorry, Naruto. I never intended for this to happen to you, but you must understand that I am not the only one to blame, the fox said solemnly. Naruto was taken aback when he saw the so-called heartless demon cry, so he decided to pay attention. Yes, the village hurts you because they think you're me, but that's not my fault. They're stupid and can't tell the difference between a prisoner and a jailer. They chose to hate you, to hurt you, and to look down on you. I didn't make them do anything, Kyuubi said, now with resentment in its tone as it thought of the villagers. Naruto was considering what the fox had said. He had to admit that it was correct. Those things were done to him by people, not by the fox. I don't understand how they can do this to their own kind. Humans despise us demons. You say we're monsters, that we're evil and can't be trusted, but they only say that because we're enemies. And anyone would say bad things about their enemies. Naruto raised his head. Have you ever witnessed a demon go after its own children? Naruto shook his head once more. What do you know about demons that your prejudiced village hasn't told you? Naruto considered it. After a brief moment, he developed a look of realization. Nothing. I've known you your entire life, Naruto, and I know one of the things you despise the most is people who judge a person before getting to know them. Tell me, how can you despise that type of person if you're the same way? You've judged me based on the perceptions of others, not your own. You think I'm evil, but you know nothing about me. Naruto was rendered speechless. He made a snap judgment on the fox before learning anything about it. How can he expect others to recognize him for who he is if he can't recognize himself? Naruto ran through the cage bars, hugged the giant fox's paw, and began to cry as he realized what he had done. I'm sorry, Kyuubi. You're right. I shouldn't judge you by what other people think of you, but by what I think of you. I don't think you're evil. You've never done anything to hurt me, which is more than I can say for the villagers. I hope we can be friends if you'll let me. Naruto embraced the colossal fox with all his might. He wanted to express his regret to it. Naruto was unexpectedly lifted far above the ground. When he looked down to assess the situation, he noticed he was being lifted by one of Kyuubi's tails. He noticed the tail leading Naruto directly to its mouth. Naruto did not struggle because he believed it was futile. How could I have been so stupid? He asked himself, defeated. Naruto's body approached Kyuubi's mouth. Its razor-sharp teeth were visible to him. The golden-haired boy shut his eyes, not wanting to see himself devoured. He waited in fear, but instead of the excruciating pain of teeth tearing through his flesh, he felt something very soft and warm rubbing against him. His body was tickled by a vibration. Naruto opened his eyes to find Kyuubi nuzzling against him. Purring came from the fox. Naruto was taken aback, but he hugged Kyuubi on its muzzle, enjoying the sensation. He felt as if he were falling. Naruto looked around and noticed that, yes, he was falling, but not in the way he had anticipated. Kyuubi was contracting. It shrunk down to about the size of a horse. It was now grasping Naruto with 3 of its tails. Kyuubi smiled at Naruto, or as close as a fox could smile. It took Naruto down and began to change again. It rose to its hind legs. Its paws became more thin and sleek, like fingers, and its entire body morphed into that of a woman. Kyuubi was still covered in fur and had the face of a fox, but it had taken on the form of a woman. The 9 tails of Kyuubi swung gracefully behind her. You're a girl, exclaimed Naruto, surprised. Kyuubi let out a sultry chuckle as she raised a small hand in front of her mouth. Of course, child, you couldn't tell, Kyuubi asked jokingly. Well, based on what the villagers told me, I always imagined you as a guy, Naruto explained, looking away and fidgeting in embarrassment. Before making her way over to Naruto, the woman's fox-like muzzle formed a gentle smile. Naruto took note of how she walked. Her weight was supported by the balls of her feet. Her movements were also gracefully swayed. Her tail swung hypnotically in the opposite direction of her hips. She was about 6 feet 2 inches tall. Naruto would say she was in her early 20s. It's difficult to tell when someone has the face of a fox. When she arrived at Naruto's house, she knelt and returned the hug Naruto had given her not long ago. Naruto enjoyed the sensation. He'd never been hugged before and was overjoyed at the prospect. I accept your apology, Naruto, and I hope we can be friends, if not more, Kyuubi said softly, sweetly, and motherlily. She spoke in a tone that the orphan boy was not used to hearing. Naruto often looked on other children with envy, imagining himself in their shoes as their parents spoiled them. He'd almost given up hope of ever being spoken to in that kind of way again. Naruto nuzzled into her fur and smiled. He'd never had a friend. He realized she was naked for the first time while nuzzling into her. He jumped back, a flush on his face. Kyuubi looked at Naruto with interest, following his gaze to where he was looking. She snapped her fingers after another sultry chuckle. A blazing blue flame engulfed her body. It vanished almost as quickly as it appeared, to be replaced by a fanciful, scarlet, Victorian gown adorning the woman's curvy figure. There's no need to be embarrassed, Naruto. It's all natural, she explained, making Naruto's blush even brighter. Kyuubi's expression changed as a result. For a brief moment, she gazed up into the darkness in silent contemplation. Her demonic irises returned to the child. Her demeanor had darkened significantly. What do you want out of life, Naruto? What? Naruto inquired, surprised. She just asked that question out of nowhere. What do you want out of life? She asked again. I want to be Hokage so that the people of the village will stop disrespecting me and start treating me like I'm somebody important, Naruto said naturally. He'd been asked that question many times before, and he'd always given the same answer. Do you really want that, Naruto, or do you want something else? Something that you think being the Hokage will grant you. You want to be the Hokage for different reasons, so maybe someone will love you, am I correct? Naruto gave a nod. That was always the real reason he worked so hard to become the Hokage. Everyone adored the Hokage, according to what he's seen. They were smitten by the Hokage. Naruto would give his life for it. Naruto, it saddens me every time I hear you say those words. You are a boy raised in isolation and terrorized so thoroughly that the only option you see is to give your life for them in order to gain their respect. These people have done nothing to deserve what you are willing to sacrifice for them. They are not good people. By choosing to strive towards serving them, you are saying it's okay to treat their own children monstrously. Naruto bowed his head and wrapped his arms around his body as Kyuubi spoke. His tiny body trembled as he clutched his arms tightly. But what else is there? If not that, I'll be alone forever. At least this way, I'll get some people to like me. And maybe some will love me. After what I'll do for them, how could they not? Naruto spoke up, his voice choked, to Kyuubi's face. His expression was desperate. What else could he do to avoid feeling lonely? Kyuubi nodded in agreement while glancing off to the side in thought, her eyes taking a distant look. So no matter what they do to you, no matter how horrible they are, you will reward them with your life and your blood, just so a few may come to like you. Kyuubi continued. How many more like you have they tortured? How many more like you will they continue to torture with their selfishness, ignorance, and hatred? How much suffering must they inflict on the helpless before someone finally stands up and says enough is enough? Naruto was startled by her harsh tone, which caused the woman to calm down and look down at him with a gentler expression. Naruto's blue eyes were conflicted, the boy standing in silence as he pondered everything he had ever wished for. Is that the type of person you want to be, Naruto? To reward their cruelty with blind loyalty, no matter who they hurt, how many they hurt. It's all okay as long as you earn their respect and love. If that's the type of person you want to be, tell me now. I'll still stay with you, Naruto. No matter what, I just need to know who you plan to be. Kyuubi continued while walking towards the boy and dropping. She gently stroked his shoulders with both of her paws. Naruto remained frozen as his entire worldview began to shatter, only waking up when he heard her speak again. No matter who you decide to be, Naruto, I won't abandon you because I see your heart. I'll stay with you until the end, even if you choose to die for them. Kyuubi said, disgust evident in her voice when referring to Naruto's village residence. Naruto cradled his head with both hands, tears streaming uncontrollably from his eyes. What was he up to? Why was he so eager to give everything to people who treated him like garbage? Why were things forced to be this way? What made them so cruel? Why couldn't they simply treat him as a child, as a person? Why had he to be so alone? Why? Naruto began to quiver once more, his entire world being called into question. His despair faded once more as he felt warm arms wrap around his body. Kyuubi was closing in for another hug. She drew his head into her chest this time, his face snuggled against her covered bosom in a secure manner. Kyuubi nuzzled the top of his head with her muzzle. Naruto melted in the warmth of her embrace. Why is the world this way? Naruto asked, finally moving his arms forward to cling to her body. Calm down, my child, she whispered soothingly to him. This is simply the world they have created through no one's fault but their own. Angels like you are often the victims of their cruel world. They can't help it. Some are decent, but even the best of them are frequently trampled over by their own kind, or become corrupted when pushed far enough. It's just their nature, the nature of all humans. It will continue as long as they rule. Naruto raised his gaze to the Kyuubi's face. He paid close attention to her, but one thing she said stood out. You'll love me? He asked, surprised. Kyuubi nodded, looking down at the boy with affection. I want to give you my love, Naruto. I want you to be my son. I will teach you, care for you, and love you as my own. I will give you what you crave, someone to love. But only if you will have me, and only if and when you are ready. Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing. Someone was expressing love to him. He clutched her tightly, not wanting to let go. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care if this is a trick. I don't care if you're a demon. I'm ready now. Just tell me what I have to do, Naruto said flatly, sobbing uncontrollably into her chest. Kyuubi smiled down at his trembling form and nodded in agreement. Naruto, in order to become my son, you must become a demon yourself. You must understand the risks. You will become half demon. You will lose some of your humanity to be replaced by your demonic side. You will truly become the thing that they all despise, unable to lead a normal life. In exchange, you will be as much a part of me as I am you. You will be my child, and I'll always love you no matter what. Naruto nodded into her torso without hesitation. Kyuubi smiled once more, bending down to kiss Naruto on the cheek. Good, but first things first, you're still in an alley. When you wake up, I'll be able to speak with you in your head. You'll feel stronger because our connection has grown. We'll need to find a safe place for you to be alone for a couple days. I'll be with you the entire time. Naruto did as he was told, and when he opened them, he found himself back behind the dumpster in the alley. Naruto stood up and jumped from rooftop to rooftop into the nearby forest, using his newfound speed. Naruto was taken aback by his own agility. He was nothing more than a dark blur moving through the trees. From his excitement, the boy yelled happily, "Are you having fun, sweetheart? Is that you, mother?" When Naruto addressed her as mother, Kyuubi smiled. "Yes, it's me, son. As I previously stated, I can now talk to you. All you have to do is think, and you'll be able to respond to me." Naruto smiled as well when he heard her call him son. That would be difficult to adjust to. He looked around and discovered a cave after some searching. He sat on the ground and waited for Kyuubi's orders after ensuring it was safe. "All right, now hand over control of your body to me while I perform the ritual." "How do I go about doing that?" "Just don't fight it when you sense me taking control." Naruto nodded, and immediately felt a strange sensation run through him. When it stopped, his hands began to rise as if possessed. Naruto began performing hand seals at breakneck speed. After a few minutes, his hand came to a halt on one of the seals. The demon symbol, red chakra, began to emerge from Naruto's body and swirl around him. He noticed blood dripping from his skin but felt no pain. To his horror, Naruto saw his flesh ripping itself from his body, the chunks swirling around with his blood and red chakra. But there was no pain. The bloody mixture swirled together, forming a cocoon around him. Naruto could only see red. Naruto had been acting like this for days. He sat in trace, cocooned in chakra, blood, and flesh. Nobody noticed or cared that he was gone. At this time of year, the third Hokage and Naruto were both too busy to think about Naruto. A few nights later, the cocoon that was holding Naruto began to crack. Small pieces of the cocoon fell to the ground, and the cocoon vanished. A figure on all fours could be seen breathing heavily. It was small and had the body of a child. It had smooth, soft skin and a slim build. It didn't have a single blemish on its body. Its nails were long and pointed, giving its hands the appearance of claws. It had long, silky, dirty blonde hair that reached its mid-back. It sprouted a furry golden fox tail from its tailbone. On top of its head, it had furry golden fox ears. It had 3 well-defined whisker marks on each side of its cheeks, and its eyes were blood red and slitted. For the first time in his new form, the boy inhaled deeply, revealing his sharp fangs. The world would welcome the birth of the half-demon Naruto, son of the 9-tailed fox, with that breath. "Welcome to your new life, Naruto. You are now half-demon and officially my son. Some of my chakra and blood were infused in you during the ritual, so technically we are blood relatives," Kyuubi said, her voice echoing in his head. "Thank you, mother. I'd like to see what I look like now," Naruto said, raising his hands to assess his transformation. "Okay, sweetheart. Because you're half-demon, your chakra control has improved, and you should be able to perform jutsu now. I'll send mental images of hand signs through your mind. Just copy them and do what I say." Naruto nodded as he awaited the images. Hand seals flashed through his head, and he copied them as they passed. Naruto was astounded by how well he could execute them. He'd never seen half of the hand seals, but he could perfectly replicate them. "Say crystal mirror jutsu now." Naruto spoke the words, and a large crystal began to rise from the ground. It rose to about 10 feet in height before coming to a halt. It was free of cracks and displayed a pristine image of Naruto. This is a very basic jutsu. It's used to train beginners. It has no real use except to reflect other things. You could probably use it as a shield, but there are much better jutsu out there, Kyuubi lectured. Naruto examined himself in the mirror. He took note of all the new features on his body. Naruto's tail began rubbing on the glass on its own, making him purr. Naruto's tail had a high sensitivity. When the furry appendage stopped rubbing against the glass, it moved in front of Naruto's face and began to sway hypnotically side to side. Naruto fixed his gaze on the sway of his tail. A strong desire overtook his adolescent form. Naruto found himself chasing his own tail before he knew it. He was on all fours, swiping wildly at something that seemed to elude him at every turn. After a few moments of chasing, he caught his tail, placed it in his mouth, and began sucking on it. "Awa, Naruto, you're so cute," Kyuubi cooed. "Remember how I said there would be consequences to being a demon? This is one of them. You will be overpowered by your urges and instincts if you don't learn to control them, and the older you get, the stronger those feelings will become. Naruto nodded, not wanting to be ruled by his emotions, but he had to admit that his tail tasted good. He took the time to scan the rest of his body while continuing to suck lightly against it. He left the cave after he had finished staring at himself. Okay, sweetheart, in order to avoid drawing suspicion to yourself, you must return to a more human form in public. Naruto came to a halt in a small clearing. How do I go about doing that, mother? Naruto smiled once more, flashing his pearly whites. He was still getting used to addressing people as mother. Just close your eyes and focus on your appearance. I would recommend pulling your tail and fox ears back into your body, shortening your teeth and claws, and making your eyes look as they did before. Naruto nodded, closed his eyes, and focused on what his mother said. Naruto resembled his old self once all of the changes were completed, except for his now silky long dirty blonde hair and more feminine figure. What should I do now? Will you train me? Yes, but not now. First, we need to make sure you're never discovered. People won't be happy if they find out you've turned into a demon. I will train you, but it will have to be in secret. You will have to act like your old self until the time comes to reveal yourself. Since you don't have school all week due to the holidays, we will have all week to train and do other things. Naruto's eyes widened as she fell silent. He raised his hand to clutch his chest. A massive wave of despair washed over him. The boy collapsed to his knees and gasped, tears welling up in his eyes. This grief was crippling. What was the source of this? Kyuubi gasped as she noticed Naruto's reaction before regaining control of her emotions. Naruto sucked in air and hunched over on all fours, still reeling from the experience. What was that? Naruto asked, his voice trembling. In a vulnerable gesture, the boy raised both arms to wrap around his own body. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I shouldn't have. This is another side effect of your transformation. Well, it may seem like a side effect to you, but what you just experienced is a core part of what it is to be a demon. From now on you will be able to feel what I feel, what anyone of our kind feels, and vice versa. Kyuubi explained solemnly. For a while, Naruto remained silent, staring off into space in thought. It felt so real, and it was. It was exactly how his mother felt. All he wanted to do now was make her happy, but he doubted he'd be able to do so if he brought it up now. So he decided to save his questions for another time for her. It's okay, mother, you said you'd train me, Naruto asked, a solemn smile spreading across his face. Kyuubi looked at Naruto with adoration, as if he could see the wheels turning in his head, observing him as he tries to figure out how to best console her. Now she could see everything, how Naruto thought and felt. She made the correct decision by bringing him into the fold. So she went on. I will teach you everything there is to know about being a demon and more, but for now, go to your apartment and leave a note saying you've gone out to train. You can't be seen, given that you're currently naked. Naruto blushed and then headed towards the village. He ran as fast as he could to his apartment once he arrived. To the naked eye, he was just a blur. Fortunately, because this was a ninja village, no one paid attention to shinobi running on top of buildings. Naruto walked across town to his apartment in under 10 minutes. He was barely out of breath when he arrived. He felt a little uneasy being inside and not in the open forest when he opened his door, which was never locked. So he wrote the note as quickly as he could in case the Hokage or Iruka were concerned about him. He changed into his extra orange jumpsuit and returned outside. He bolted from the village and into the nearby forest. After about an hour of exploring, the boy came across a large clearing with a nearby stream. How will you train me, mother, if you're sealed inside me? It's as simple as summoning me. But if you're not sealed inside me, how will I summon you? A summoning is a special case. Summoned creatures exist outside this reality and are not bound by anything on Earth except the summoning contract. If you summon me, you would summon another form of me from outside this reality, and I would be able to be with you that way. Of course, my soul will still be bound to you by this seal the entire time, but my mind will transfer to the body you summon. Naruto exhaled a sigh. He wasn't even going to try to figure out what Kyuubi was saying. All he got out of it was the ability to summon her. Wait, don't I need a summoning contract? I think we studied that in school. Yes, and now that you're a demon, you'll be able to generate the contract. Just as before, I'll send hand seals through your mind, and you'll simply copy those seals. They flashed through Naruto's mind, and he copied each one. After he finished, there was a puff of smoke and a scroll in the air. It started to drop, but he caught it with reflexes he didn't know he had. When he opened it, there were no names on the scroll. This is a new summoning contract. It is designed so you will be the first to sign it and have complete control over the summons, which are foxes if you haven't guessed already. Now bite your thumb and quickly sign your name. Naruto did as he was told. He could see why his mother told him to do it quickly. As he finished, Naruto's thumb started to glow red, healing within a few moments, but not before he wrote his name. Now perform these hand seals. Put your hand on the scroll, pump as much chakra as you can into it, and say summoning jutsu. Naruto was again quick to comply, his brow furrowed in concentration. There was a poof of smoke, and out of the smoke stepped Kyuubi in her humanoid fox form. She had on her usual scarlet Victorian dress, walking forward with that notable sultry sway. She looked down on Naruto with a pleased smirk. "Hello, sweetheart." Naruto ran over to his mother and threw himself at her. She caught him in her arms and hugged him tight. They sat down now, Naruto's small body settling atop the woman's lap. "Hello, mother," Naruto said with a contented smile. There was something different about touching her. It felt more real than before. Naruto squeezed her body needily, hugging his skinny arms around her waist and burying his face innocently against her cushiony breasts. Kyuubi smiled warmly down to her child, wrapping one arm around his waist and cradling his head against her bosom in a protective manner. The connection they made early caused this moment to be more profound than either could have felt when Naruto was still human. They were both simultaneously feeling what it was like for their partner to hold the other. Their breaths moved in sync, their hearts began to beat at the same pace. This moment was a bit overwhelming for them both. Naruto for the first time actually feeling the love of a mother, and Kyuubi for the first time in years, feeling again what it was like to hold her child. They stayed that way for what seemed like an eternity. The world seemed to disappear around them as they indulged in each other's presence. They entered a trance-like state, fully awake and aware, but neither wanting to end the moment of that embrace. Neither one of them spoke until Naruto felt a cold chill travel up his spine. Slowly the boy's eyes fluttered open as he pulled his head back and looked around at his surroundings. Night had fallen and he'd spent literally the entire day atop Kyuubi's lap. He looked up to notice her eyes staring down at him in an adoring fashion. Kyuubi leaned down to place a gentle kiss against his forehead. "Hi," Naruto whispered sheepishly before leaning forward to nuzzle his face back into her soft and warm bosom. Kyuubi released a sultry chuckle, leaning down to nose her face into the side of the golden-haired boy's head. "You're getting chilly, I can tell. Harness and control your demonic chakra to keep yourself warm, sweetheart," Kyuubi instructed while moving both her hands up to cup each side of Naruto's face. She tilted his head upwards so he'd have to look into her eyes. "Like this," Kyuubi said while closing her eyes and shifting her chakra flow throughout her body. Naruto closed his eyes as he literally felt the way her chakra moved through the connection they shared. His body instinctively began to mimic hers. Almost instantly his body heated up. As he began to harness his demonic chakra, Naruto's body returned to its demonic form as opposed to his human disguise. His fluffy ears sprouted atop his head, his tail erupted from his tailbone, his nails and teeth sharpened, and the whiskers along his face grew more pronounced. And of course his eyes shifted from blue to slitted dark red pupils. The transformation caused a tearing noise to emanate from his pants. Kyuubi opened her eyes to assess the damage. A soft blush spread across Naruto's cheeks when hearing that noise. He bowed his head in mild embarrassment. Kyuubi chuckled once more in that sultry manner before tapping Naruto's hip, causing the fabric of his pants to sew itself back together to fix up that hole. Naruto noticed that Kyuubi didn't seem to need to perform hand signs to manipulate her chakra into jutsu. He could feel the way her chakra contorted to form jutsu within her body without the need for hand signs, something he wasn't able to mimic yet. "Will you teach me all the things you've been showing me today, mother?" "Of course, sweetie. I will teach you that and so much more. Let's start now." "Okay," Naruto said cheerfully. Kyuubi got up and so did Naruto. She put 2 fingers to Naruto's head and they started to glow. When she took them away, Naruto felt as if someone just dropped a truck on him. His knees wobbled as he struggled to stay standing up. After a few minutes he stood straight up, but Kyuubi could still see that he was strained. "Your training starts now, son. I've put a gravity seal on you. It increases the gravity on your body. This will make you stronger and faster in the long run. Now give me 10 laps around the clearing, 50 push-ups, sit-ups, and jumping jacks." Naruto nodded and started his workout. "While you're doing this, I will be lecturing you on subjects I think are most essential." And Kyuubi started the lesson. At the end of the day, Naruto nearly collapsed from exhaustion. He fell right into his mother's arms when he was done with his training. He had done many exercises that went over into the next day. Kyuubi had lectured him on many subjects like strategy, jutsu, demonic culture, and even demonic mating habits. Though she barely touched the subjects, he'd be taught much more thoroughly with time. Naruto quickly fell to sleep in his mother's arms. He had just gotten a taste of what it was going to be like to be a demon. Naruto did exactly what his mother said for the next 3 years, and no one was suspicious. He would go to school and complete all of his assignments. He wore his hideous bright orange jumpsuit to class. He was late for class, played pranks, and was last in his class. If the man offered, he would go eat ramen with Iruka. He'd act exactly like his hyperactive, happy-go-lucky self, and the villagers' opinion of him never changed. They still despised Naruto. He could still see the adults' venomous stares, and the adults kept their children away from Naruto, preventing him from making friends. Even if the parents did not keep their children away from Naruto, the children disliked him. Naruto, of course, was unconcerned. He was content because, no matter how much the villagers despised him, his mother, the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi, still loved him. Nonetheless, Naruto wished he had some friends his own age. Naruto isn't the dope everyone thinks he is. Naruto is a three-tailed half-demon in disguise. Naruto has looked up to his mother in the 3 years he has known her. He learned everything from her. He had grown in power as a result of his mother's teachings, and their relationship had grown stronger over time. They were inseparable, spending as much time as they could together. Being as close to his mother as Naruto was, he picked up a few things. Consider how she walked. When Naruto walked, he would swing his hips and sway. His voice was soft and confident when he spoke. He also developed some habits, such as sucking on his tail or running his hand through his long silky blonde hair on a regular basis. Naruto had matured in 3 years. He was taller now, and his hair had grown to cover his lower back. His body had slimmed down. Despite his extensive training, he did not gain much muscle. He was now sporting 3 golden fuzzy fox tails. Despite the time he spent with his mother, Naruto began to feel as if something was missing now that he had 3 tails. Naruto's behavior was immediately noticed by Kyuubi. He'd recently become more silent during their cuddle sessions, staring blankly into space as if lost in thought. The problem came to a head after a particularly rigorous training session. Naruto spun around, dodging quick strikes from the 4 demonic clones who surrounded him. He moved in a graceful, hypnotic manner, weaving, spinning, and flipping through the deadly assault of his clones with elongated clawed fingers. Naruto deflected 2 strikes at the same time by jumping up and spinning upside down while lashing out with his 3 tails. The preteen attacked like a helicopter, striking and destroying all 4 clones at the same time. He then dropped to his knees and took a soft breath before landing in a one-handed handstand. Kyuubi, who was lying lazily along her side and casually eating grapes, was watching her from a distance. She rose slowly and made her way over to her son. She walked sensuously and gracefully, her hips sashaying gently from side to side and her 9 long fox tails swaying hypnotically behind her. She moved behind Naruto, wrapping her arms around his waist and nuzzling her cheek against his. Demons were incredibly affectionate. Yet another superb performance, son, Kyuubi said directly into Naruto's fluffy golden fox ear. Naruto nodded and closed his demon-slitted, blood-red eyes to enjoy the physical attention for a moment. Yes, thank you, mother, the adolescent said softly, kissing her on the cheek and slowly pulling away. With a puzzled expression, he walked over to a nearby river. He moved exactly like his mother, his 3 tails swaying sensuously and hypnotically. When Naruto moved away from her, Kyuubi raised an eyebrow. That was unusual. Naruto and Kyuubi were usually inseparable. They'd cuddle for hours, but he'd grown distant recently. Kyuubi shifted her weight to one side, a hand on her hip, as she watched her son. Okay, what's been going on with you lately, sweetheart? Kyuubi inquired, concerned. Naruto had made it to the edge of the stream by this point. He leaned heavily on one hip, casually wrapping both arms around his stomach. In thought, Naruto looked down at the rushing water. It's really nothing. I mean, it's not a big deal. Naruto shook his head, raising one hand to lightly brush a portion of his long, spiky bangs away from his face. His hair was waist length, with a portion of it braided and styled into a complex crown around his head. Kyuubi frowned as she observed her son's actions. Come now, Naruto. You can't hide anything from me. Something is clearly wrong, Kyuubi said as he walked forward to stand behind Naruto. She worked her fingers through the boy's hair, massaging the back of his head before grabbing a few of those golden strands and braiding them together. Naruto couldn't help but lean back against her touch, closing his eyes slightly as a contented sigh escaped his lips. The boy then opened his demonic orbs into a half-lidded gaze, looking at his mother and himself reflected in the stream water. It's just that, well, at school, everyone seems to have friends, and I know I have to act the way I act at school so no one is suspicious of me. But I just wish I had a friend or two who I could be myself around, Naruto explained, turning his head to the side to look up at Kyuubi. who was still much taller than the preteen boy. I'm not saying your love isn't sufficient, it's just. But before he could continue, Kyuubi placed a small finger against his lips. I know what you mean, sweetheart. And you're right, you should have someone your own age to interact with. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You've already obtained your third tail and haven't even been around any of your peers. I should have done something about this much sooner. Kyuubi sighed, a little disappointed in herself for allowing her son to suffer for so long. Naruto looked around, wide-eyed, before turning around to face her, both hands raised to cup either side of Kyuubi's face. Naruto's hands were soft and smooth, and his body was gradually becoming more demonic. That is, it grew to resemble the person he was close to, his mother's name. His eyelashes were thick and long, and his hips were slightly larger than a typical boy's. His features were softer and more rounded. Every day, he started to resemble Kyuubi more and more. Naruto raised his worried gaze to his mother's face, sensing her guilt and conflict as if it were his own. Naruto gently tugged on Kyuubi's face, causing her to bend down and press their foreheads together before closing their eyes and taking a deep breath. You don't have to apologize. I was just speaking my mind. I know this isn't something you can help with, but it's best for me to keep my distance around my peers at school to protect myself. And you, Naruto said, tenderly rubbing Kyuubi's cheek. Kyuubi sighed and drew her head back slightly, her feral gaze fixed on him. That's not entirely correct, sweetheart. This is something I can assist with, Kyuubi corrected, causing Naruto to tilt his head to the side in confusion. What exactly do you mean? Kyuubi remained silent for a long time as he looked down at Naruto. Naruto could tell she was thinking things through and remained silent so as not to disrupt her thoughts. Kyuubi nodded and took one of Naruto's hands in hers, kissing the back of it and entwining her fingers with his. I wanted to wait a little longer, but she'll just have to adjust, Kyuubi said as she moved to stand by Naruto's side and face the large grassy clearing. Naruto frowned slightly, his expression indicating confusion. What do you? But before he could finish his sentence, a blinding light erupted from the center of their clearing. Despite its brightness, Naruto and Kyuubi were unafraid to look at it. While Naruto watched the event with interest, Kyuubi had a knowing smirk on her face. For a while, the blazing light continued to emanate from the clearing, but Naruto soon noticed a figure forming in the center. The light vanished in an instant, replaced by a large plume of blue fire. Naruto immediately recognized the fire as a teleportation jutsu, a demonic teleportation technique. Naruto looked up at Kyuubi to gauge her reaction, but Kyuubi just stared into the flames. As a result, Naruto returned his focus to the fire. His eyes widened in surprise at what he saw. A young woman emerged from the flames, but she wasn't just any ordinary girl, she was a demon. She was covered in black fur from head to toe and stood on two legs. Aside from the fur, her body was that of a normal girl, but her face, like Kyuubi's, was that of a fox. She appeared to be the same age as Naruto, albeit a little shorter. Naruto quickly realized she was naked. As a result of this realization, a dark red flush formed across his face, and he averted his gaze. The fox girl took a defensive stance, her arms at her sides. She only had 5 fingers, but her claws were long and razor sharp. Her eyes were pitch black, darting around frantically to assess her new surroundings. She was panting quickly, as if she was trying to catch her breath. Her head had 2 furry black ears that twitched constantly as she took in the sounds of her surroundings. Kyuubi lowered his gaze to Naruto, who was still averting his gaze from the naked girl. Kyuubi laughed as he reached down to grab Naruto's hand and lead him over to the black-furred demoness. "You're so cute," Kyuubi said to her son. The two came to a halt in front of the girl. The girl's eyes were still darting around, and she was clearly in distress. Kyuubi lowered herself to her knees, her face level with the adolescent fox. Kyuubi reached forward and cupped both sides of the girl's face, staring into her eyes intensely. "Just focus on me, Midnight. Don't worry about anything else," Kyuubi said tenderly, drawing the girl's attention, who was visibly shaking. She was clearly perplexed and overwhelmed, and Kyuubi could sense it as if she were experiencing it herself. "Kyuubi-sama?" the girl asked, her voice soft and high-pitched. Naruto was finally able to return his gaze to the naked girl, focusing on her face. Her voice was nice. She sounded like any other girl, at least according to him. "Yes, it's me, child," Kyuubi replied, gently caressing the girl's cheek. Midnight's nerves were soothed by the touch. She slowed her shaking as she gazed adoringly at Kyuubi's face. "I won," the girl said before collapsing into Kyuubi's arms and passing out. Kyuubi swooped down and scooped up the adolescent girl in her arms. She turned and motioned for Naruto to take her. Naruto was taken aback, but he wasted no time. He moved forward, carefully grabbing the naked demon girl from Kyuubi and cradling her in his arms in a bridal pose. "What is going on, mother?" Naruto asked, wrapping his three tails around the girl's body, the boy holding her unconscious form against his chest. Kyuubi smiled and reached down to stroke the sleeping girl's head. She had a massive mane of silky black, ass-length hair that hung loosely as Naruto held her. "Naruto, you have plenty of other people. If you remember, I'm part of the very powerful Fox clan in the demonic dimension, and since you're my son, you're part of that clan as well." Naruto was well aware of everything. In the demonic dimension, there are numerous types of demons. Where all demons came from, only a few demons possess the power and resources to cross over into the human realm. When this occurs, it is usually because they have been summoned. Except for when an ambitious human gained the power and resources to bring a demon through the threshold. The demonic dimension was ruled by clans of various species and existed completely separate from the human world. The Fox family was one of the most powerful families in the dimension. But Naruto couldn't see how being a member of a clan had anything to do with what was going on right now. Kyuubi saw Naruto's confusion and continued to explain. "Son, I am a big part of the clan, so my brethren are aware of my situation. They can't do anything about it, but they are aware. Powerful demons aren't allowed to dwell on Earth. The only reason there are demons here is because they are weak or they were summoned here by very powerful jutsu. Even now, I can't go back to my clan, but they are aware of my struggle and have been watching me in. They were drenched in blood. She is the clan's gift to you, another child of our kind, about your age, to grow with and befriend. Hopefully she can teach you more about your heritage, about what it is to be a demon, to have a real family, a real friend. Not just an overbearing mother," Kyuubi said softly. In awe, Naruto looked down at the girl. "A friend? For me? They would go out of their way to do this for me?" Naruto asked, clearly moved by the gesture, tears welling up in his eyes. Kyuubi nodded, raising one of her 9 tails to wipe away his tears. "Of course, sweetheart. You are my son. You are family, not just to me, but to all of us. You can't speak to them like I can. You don't have the proper connection. But in time you will. In time you will see their faces, you will feel their love. The love of the Fox clan. In the meantime, hopefully she will give you a taste of that," Kyuubi said as he bent down to place a tender kiss against Naruto's. She gave up trying to wipe his tears away because they just kept falling. Naruto raised his teary gaze to his mother, a tender smile on his face as he hugged Midnight's unconscious form to himself. "Thank you," Naruto said softly, adoringly looking down at the girl in his arms. Kyuubi nodded satisfiedly before taking a few steps back. "She's new to this world, Naruto. She'll need your guidance, and hopefully she'll offer some of her own. Take care of her," Kyuubi said as he vanished in a plume of blue flames. Naruto stared blankly at the spot where his mother had been standing only a few moments before. Finally, he lowered his gaze to the black-furred fox. He approached a tree and leaned against it, carefully sliding down and sitting against the bark. The girl in his arms began to move. Her eyes fluttered open into a half-lidded stare, her pitch-black orbs looking up at Naruto's face. A small smile began to form on her lips. Simultaneously, she raised a shaky hand to lightly touch the side of Naruto's face. Naruto eagerly leaned into that touch. She was so gentle. "Naruto-kun?" the girl asked, her voice sleepy. Naruto nodded and leaned in for a gentle kiss on her brow. "Hello, Midnight. It's nice to meet you," Naruto said softly and tenderly. When she heard his voice, she smiled even wider, revealing her sharp fangs. She went unconscious almost as soon as she showed her fangs. She seemed to have just enough energy to hear his voice before collapsing. Naruto fixed his adoring gaze on her before tightening his protective grip on her body and closing his eyes restfully. Kyuubi kept a knowing smirk on his face as he watched the scene from the sidelines. She turned around and walked deeper into the forest surrounding their usual clearing, leaving the two to their own devices. She smiled as she walked through the woods, eventually settling near a large tree. Kyuubi knelt, still wearing her red kimono and retaining her humanoid form. She sat with her furry hands on her lap and closed her eyes in a meditative state. The jutsu was a success. She transferred here without a hitch. At this rate, it'll only be a matter of time before we can build a larger portal, Kyuubi pondered. In a galaxy far, far away, in a solitary room, a man stood silently. This man was covered in red fur with gray patches on various parts of his body. He was completely naked, his posture hunched. He was trailed by 8 fox tails. His eyes were closed, and his body was motionless. The man abruptly opened his eyes and snapped his fingers. A plume of blue flames erupted in front of him in an instant. A piece of dark parchment was pulled from the flame by the man. He then released the strange piece of parchment, which appeared to be covered in skin. The elderly fox clawed into the palm of his furred hand to draw blood without showing any signs of pain. He began frantically writing on the parchment with his own blood for several minutes. He sighed contentedly after a while, the wound on his palm healing as he grabbed the parchment in both paws and stared down at it, a pleased grin spreading across his face. "It's only a matter of time now, my queen," the man said to himself as he took the parchment and walked out of the room. As morning approached, soft chirping filled the air. Atop a grassy clearing miles away from Konoha village, two figures huddled together in a tight cuddly ball. They were both dozing off. Naruto was one of those figures, with both arms tightly wrapped around his new friend's waist. Their legs were intertwined, as were their tails. He held this position with his mother on several occasions. Naruto was the first to move, a contented smile on his face due to the warmth of the body he was currently curled up with. With his eyes still closed, Naruto began to rub his thighs against his partner's, only to have his eyes flutter open in surprise. This was not like his mother. Naruto frequently slept curled up with his mother, but this person was significantly smaller. When Naruto's slitted feral eyes settled, he looked down to see two pitch-black eyes staring up at him. The girl was wide awake and silently watching him sleep. Suddenly, the events of the previous night came flooding back to him. Naruto awoke from his trance to find Midnight still silently staring up at him. He smiled down at her and leaned down to place a gentle kiss against her forehead, as his mother had done for him. "Good morning, Midnight," Naruto said affectionately before letting out a small yawn. The girl raised one furred paw in adoration, caressing Naruto's cheek and staring with a longing gaze. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," she murmured dreamily. Naruto couldn't help but smile when he heard her voice. He then untangled himself from her and went about his morning routine. Midnight kept a close eye on him. Naruto then stretched his body out like a cat, letting out a small yawn. Midnight gave him his space, sitting on her buttocks and hugging her knees to her chest while engrossed in Naruto. The girl's furry fox ears twitched as she watched him. For the first time since meeting Naruto, she began to take in her surroundings. What followed was indescribable. Midnight realized how different this world was from where she came from when she wasn't focused on Naruto. The sun shone brightly and high in the sky. A gentle breeze tickled her skin. Butterflies flitted about, birds chipped and flew through the sky, and the water from a nearby stream sparkled and made a soothing noise as it flowed. Midnight slowly stood up and began to turn around on her heels, her ears twitching quickly and her eyes widening as she marveled at the world she was so new to. How is this possible? Midnight wondered as she walked over to the nearby stream and knelt near the edge. She then dipped a single hand into the water and quickly drew it back. Before licking her own digits, the girl scanned her wet fingers, squinting her eyes suspiciously. She let out a sharp gasp before quickly dipping both her hands into the flowing stream. The feel of clean, running water against her skin and fur was incredible. Naruto approached the scene silently, watching Midnight as she appeared to discover water for the first time. He came to a halt a few feet away, canting his head to the side to observe her actions. What he saw next took him by surprise. Midnight moved her gaze slowly toward Naruto, who was still kneeling at the edge of the stream. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What is this?" Midnight asked. Her voice choked as she drew her paws from the water and licked them. Naruto had a sympathetic expression on his face as he looked down at her. He had forgotten Kyuubi's lessons about how the demon realm differed from the human realm. Naruto moved forward and kneeled by Midnight's side, reaching into the stream with both hands and looking expectantly at the girl as he cupped a handful of water. Midnight moved slowly to mimic him, bringing a pool of water into her own hands. Naruto then drank the water slowly, prompting Midnight to cautiously look down at the liquid before drinking it as well. Midnight's eyes widened in surprise as the water touched her tongue. She drank every drop of water in his palm before staring at the stream. Without hesitation, the girl dipped her head into the stream, desperately gulping at the substance. Naruto stared in awe, almost frozen in fascination as he watched the girl. She didn't raise her head for a while. Naruto slowly reached forward to pat her shoulder after a few long minutes. Midnight finally pulled her head out of the stream before he could, her silky, wet black hair smacking Naruto in the face. She then looked at him, terrified. "Oh, Naruto-kun," she exclaimed as she launched herself at him, gripping his face in her paws and inspecting any damage she had done. Naruto simply smirked and blew some of her hair away from his face. "It's okay, Midnight. I'm tougher than I look," Naruto joked. Midnight looked at him with a blank expression, not understanding the joke, before nodding and smiling softly. "I know. I'm sorry. There's just but before she could explain herself, Naruto silenced her with a single finger against her lips. "You don't have to apologize to me, Midnight. This must be so overwhelming for you. I'll do my best to make you feel at ease." the blonde-haired preteen stated tenderly. Midnight's heart skipped a beat in response to those words. She jumped forward, wrapped her arms around his neck, and clung to Naruto's naked body tightly. Naruto couldn't stop the harsh blush from spreading across his face. "Are you torturing my boy over here?" a sultry voice from the side asked, that silky voice belonging to none other than Kyuubi herself. The woman approached the two with an amused smirk on her face. Naruto raised a hand to twirl a few strands of his blonde hair around his finger, a nervous grin on his face. "Oh, mother, good morning," Naruto said. Midnight immediately turned to face Kyuubi, bending her knees and bowing her entire body forward, the girl's forehead to the ground. Naruto looked at the girl, stunned. Midnight apologized. "I'm sorry if I offended your highness." At the sight, Naruto raised both of his brows. "What?" Naruto exclaimed, his gaze shifting from Kyuubi to Midnight in disbelief. Kyuubi sighed deeply before dropping to her knees in front of Midnight and cupping her face with both hands, forcing Midnight to look up into Kyuubi's eyes. "I don't want you to call me that again. That's Kyu-chan to you," Kyuubi stated emphatically. Midnight raised her wide eyes and nodded obediently. The girl was frozen, as if stunned by Kyuubi's touch and presence. "Yes, Kyu-chan," Midnight corrected herself quickly, clutching her bottom lip and biting into the grass beneath her. The girl was clearly nervous in the presence of Kyuubi. "What's with all this your highness nonsense? You told me you were important in the Fox clan, but you never said you were royalty," Naruto said accusingly, one brow raised and an amused smirk across his face, just like his mother. Kyuubi rolled her eyes and huffed as she stood up and reached for Midnight's hand to help the girl to her feet. "It's not that important," Kyuubi said dismissively, waving her furred hand. Midnight was taken aback by Kyuubi's words. "With all due respect, you're Kyu-chan. You're a legend. Everyone knows who you are. Just because you've been gone for a few thousand years doesn't mean we will forget. You are our queen and will always be our queen," Midnight exclaimed before gasping and apologizing. Kyuubi smiled softly and moved her hand down to Midnight's chin, raising the girl's head. "You need to stop treating me like a goddess. I haven't ruled for generations," Kyuubi said. "But you are a goddess," Midnight exclaimed once more before bowing her head once more. Naruto looked at the girl, stunned. There was so much he didn't know about his mother. He had a lot of questions. When she saw Midnight bow her head again, Kyuubi rolled her eyes. Kyuubi took a step in front of Midnight and locked his gaze on the short girl. Naruto stood there quietly, knowing what happened when Kyuubi became this way. A lecture was on the way. "Look at me, girl," Kyuubi demanded sternly. Midnight raised her head and cast a tentative glance up at Kyuubi through her pitch-black pupils. "What brings you here?" Kyuubi inquired. Midnight paused for a moment before responding. "For you and for Naruto," Midnight replied softly, looking over to where Naruto was silently watching. Naruto averted his gaze and smiled shyly in response to the response. When he heard Kyuubi's response, his attention was drawn back to the two women. "No, why are you here? What gives you the right to be here instead of all those other girls who fought to be where you are now?" Kyuubi yelled angrily. Naruto flinched at her tone. He rarely saw her in this state. He did notice, however, that Midnight did not flinch. Midnight's posture changed in seconds, and he watched it almost in slow motion. She shifted from a reserved, meek posture to a much more straightened and confident one. The black-furred fox girl raised her head proudly and fixed her fiery gaze on Kyuubi. "I'm here because I fought and won, and because I'm strong," Midnight replied confidently. Kyuubi's face lit up with delight at that response. "You're damn right, darling. You're here because you're worthy. Worth of me, of my son. At least so far. You're not here because of how well you can suck up to me. You're here because you earned it. Now act like it," Kyuubi said, leaning in for a tender kiss on Midnight's brow. Midnight closed her eyes and sighed softly as her entire body relaxed. Kyuubi then drew back, a satisfied smile on his face. Midnight's demeanor had completely changed, the girl appearing much more relaxed and self-assured. Midnight looked up at Kyuubi before taking a step forward and extending both her arms. Kyuubi took Midnight's hands and entwined their fingers, gazing into each other's eyes before shivering. As they began the bond, they felt a rush of emotion run through their bodies. The first to speak was Midnight. "I could never disappoint you, Kyu-chan. I've adored you since I was a baby, and I've always dreamed of meeting you. So when I heard about the opportunity, and heard the stories about your son, I knew it had to be me who crossed over," Midnight explained before pulling her hands away from Kyuubi and turning her attention to Naruto. The boy had been staring silently with a blank expression. This was an eventful day. He'd witnessed a rare sight of his mother, but when he noticed Midnight's gaze, the boy's breath caught in his throat. She looked at him in a way he wasn't used to seeing. Midnight slowly began to walk towards Naruto with that sensual sway. She still didn't have any clothes on. Midnight, on the other hand, moved in front of Naruto, raising her arms to his neck and wrapping her arms around him. The boy's cheeks flushed with that familiar flush. "Didn't I tell you to stop torturing my boy? We need to get some clothes on you," Kyuubi joked, noticing Naruto's difficult little problem between his legs. Midnight cocked her head to the side and cast a puzzled look at Kyuubi. "Clothes?" Some time later. "So, what exactly is this?" Midnight inquired as a pair of white pantyhose were shimmied up the girl's hips. The three demons had arrived at Naruto's apartment. While Naruto waited in his room, Kyuubi and Midnight were in Naruto's apartment's bathroom. He didn't just sit there. He was going through his morning routine. He was sitting on his bed with his legs crossed and a red ball of chakra swirling around between his two hands in front of him at the time. A chakra control exercise. Kyuubi was putting clothes on Midnight in the bathroom, just now securing those panties around the girl's hips. Kyuubi then approached Midnight and wrapped her arms around the girl's stomach as they both looked into the bathroom mirror. "What's the point of wearing these extra things?" Midnight wondered as Kyuubi reached for a white bra from the sink. "It's part of human culture. Unlike us, humans get cold, so they wear things to keep warm," Kyuubi explained as Midnight raised her arms to place the bra over her developing chest. Midnight, despite being a demon, was still around Naruto's age and still had a lot of growing to do, especially in the chest department. "I understand why humans want to wear this stuff, but why should I?" Midnight asked, frowning, as that bra tightened around her torso, and Kyuubi simply nodded. "Because you will be around my son, who is only half human. And I'm sure you'll come into contact with humans at some point. Plus there are additional benefits," Kyuubi hinted as he produced a pair of black girl's cargo pants for Midnight to wear, as is customary for many ninja. Midnight canted her head to the side, staring at Kyuubi through the mirror. "What do you mean, extra benefits?" Midnight inquired as she was directed to put on a pair of tight cargo pants presented to her by Kyuubi. Midnight complied and stepped into those pants, allowing Kyuubi to shimmy them up the girl's slender legs. In response to the girl's question, Kyuubi smirked and placed her hands firmly on Midnight's hips. "I mean, the things you wear can be very appealing to the eye, especially for growing boys. Human boys. Don't think I didn't notice the way you look at him," Kyuubi said as he took a fishnet shirt and slid it over Midnight's torso to complete the outfit. "Many of the shinobi girls wear something similar to this. Girls you'll have to compete with," Kyuubi said as she wrapped her arms around Midnight's waist again and hugged her tightly from behind. Midnight leaned back into Kyuubi's touch before widening her eyes as she realized what Kyuubi meant. She looked in the mirror at herself. "Competition?" the girl asked, frowning. She had to go through a lot just to get here. When Kyuubi noticed that reaction, he chuckled. "Of course, darling. What did you think you'd have my son all to yourself just because you crossed over?" Kyuubi questioned, her brow raised. Midnight averted her gaze gradually. "I was hoping we'd at least be friends, that's all." Kyuubi cut Midnight off and narrowed her gaze on the girl. Midnight remained silent, avoiding direct eye contact with Kyuubi. "You may be ready for something like that, but my boy isn't. He's only half demon. He hasn't gone through his cycle yet. Of course I know you have, but you're full demon, you're ready for such things far faster than humans. I can smell it on you." Your Kyuubi then widened his eyes and looked down at the girl, astounded. Midnight continued to look away. "No, I don't believe it." Your Kyuubi spoke tentatively before boldly slid a hand down Midnight's hips and carefully ran a finger up against the fabric of Midnight's pants between her legs. Regardless of the clothing's boundaries, that touch was all Kyuubi needed to confirm what she wanted to know. "Virgin?" Kyuubi exclaimed in surprise. Midnight clenched her thighs and silently nodded her head. "How is that possible? You went through your cycle years ago." Kyuubi wondered, his voice suspicious and disbelieving. Midnight smiled softly, her eyes drifting off to the side in a dreamy manner. "It was hard. I drove the boys around me insane, but I always worshipped you, Kyu-chan. I listened to all the stories, the tales of your adventures, and I wanted to be just like you. And around the time of my cycle, I heard about your son, Naruto, the boy who the great Kyuubi took in as her son. I knew from that moment that I wanted to save myself, to have a chance to be a part of your life and his." Kyuubi affectionately squeezed the girl's waist, gaining a new respect for her. "I admire your dedication, Midnight, but that doesn't give you a right to my son. You must earn it," Kyuubi explained. Midnight nodded her head in agreement. "I know." Kyuubi looked at the girl closely before sighing and leaning down to place a kiss on the girl's cheek, which caused Midnight to smile. "It will be a few years before Naruto hits his cycle. But in the meantime, if you are serious about being with him, you must first be his friend. He is my son, and when the time comes, he will be a very eligible bachelor, but he must choose you. And you must accept it if he chooses someone else," Kyuubi warned. Midnight's eyes narrowed as a result of something. The girl then straightened her back. She jerked away from Kyuubi's grip to grab the door handle. Midnight returned to Kyuubi with determination in her pitch black orbs before opening it. He will choose me, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen, Midnight stated firmly while twisting the doorknob, which she'd only recently learned how to do. One piece of advice: if you want him to choose you, you have to give him what he needs. And he'll do the same for you even if he doesn't choose you. You have to be a friend first. If you don't and you hurt him, I'll send you back myself, Kyuubi warned. His gaze narrowed. Midnight hesitated, her confidence wavering for a fraction of a second. But she eventually nodded and opened the bathroom door, closing it behind her. Midnight then leaned back against the bathroom door, one hand on her chest. She remained silent, a worried look on her face. Midnight took a deep breath and straightened up, walking towards the entrance to Naruto's room. Midnight noticed Naruto's concentration on the demonic ball of chakra between his hands while the door remained open. Midnight nervously bit her bottom lip when she saw his face. "Screw it," she said to herself before darting into the room, completely out of control in his presence. While sitting atop the bed, Naruto was almost completely unaware of his surroundings, his legs crossed and a visible ball of chakra swirling between both his hands. He only awoke from his trance when he heard footsteps approaching his bed. When Midnight leaped forward, wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, and pounced him, he gasped. Naruto barely had time to adjust to her new outfit before being showered with kisses. He wrapped his arms around her waist and rolled over onto her, straddling her waist while she lay on her back. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her, pinning her wrists above her head. "Why does mother enjoy torturing me so much?" Naruto sighed as he climbed off Midnight and lay by her side. Midnight rolled onto her side and looked into his eyes. "I think that's just what mothers do," Midnight said matter-of-factly, resting her head on her furred hands. Naruto nodded and tapped his finger against his chin. "It appears that way," he joked, looking at her with interest. "Was your mother like that?" Naruto prodded, finally getting down to asking her who she was. When asked the question, Midnight sat up straight. "Well, aren't you the curious one? How about this? If we can go outside again, I'll tell you everything you want to know about me," Midnight said, looking out Naruto's window. The sun was still up in the early evening. Naruto blinked in surprise, then chuckled a little. "You don't need my permission to go outside, and you also don't need to make any deals with me to do so," Naruto explained as he sat up and extended his hand to her. Midnight gave Naruto a brief look before nodding and taking his hand. "I'll do you one better. I have so much to show you," Naruto said before casting a jutsu on himself to disguise himself in a long black hooded robe. Midnight watched him perform that jutsu before mimicking his hand signs exactly and performing the jutsu herself. Naruto looked at her in awe before smiling and leading her to the window sill. For the rest of the day, Naruto took Midnight around his village, explaining what various things were. He took her to shops, parks, and to explore the forests surrounding the village, making sure to avoid large crowds despite their disguises, which Midnight noticed. Eventually, they started talking and learning more about each other, but before Naruto could learn too much about her, he noticed that the sun was going down. Naruto walked along the grass with Midnight by his side, both still holding hands, until he reached the head of the 4th Hokage's monument and sat down, dangling his legs a little to the front of that monument. Midnight followed suit, pressing her hips to Naruto's and leaning against his arm. Naruto smiled softly and wrapped an arm around her waist. "I wanted to be here when you saw this for the first time," Naruto said tenderly. Midnight looked up, puzzled, at Naruto's face. "See what I mean?" Midnight asked before Naruto reached over and gently grabbed under Midnight's chin, turning her head forward so she could finally see the sun setting over the horizon. Midnight gasped, her breath catching in her throat, and tears began to form in her eyes and trail down her cheeks. She turned her head away and shuddered a bit, raising a hand up to cover her mouth. Naruto looked at her softly, reaching out his free hand to gently wipe away her tears. "I hope you like it," Naruto whispered soothingly. Midnight stared down at the ground for a moment before finally shifting her gaze to Naruto's face. But what he saw in Midnight's eyes wasn't happiness, but a daunting sadness. And as soon as he saw her eyes, a wave of emotions showed through his body. Again he felt what she felt: sadness, confusion, frustration, anger, hate. The girl's head was hung low, her silky black hair covering most of her face, but she gradually began to rise, standing on her feet, her fist balled, her body shaking as she looked down on the village. "I haven't yet told you how I was summoned here. I fought my way here. A competition among demon children your age for the opportunity to meet you in Kyuu-chan. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. As you are aware, traveling between the demon and human realms is extremely difficult. It took a long time for our clan to gather enough energy to build a portal large enough to carry just me. That's because I'm just a kid who isn't very strong right now. Ideal. None of the more powerful demons would be able to pass, Midnight explained, her teeth clenched in rage, and Naruto sat silently, wondering where she was going with this. I'm not royalty. Nobody expected me to win. A dozen other candidates with more powerful parents were expected to win. But I had been training and preparing for as long as I could remember, all in order for me to meet Kyuubi. That was before I met you, Naruto. Kyuubi was my deity. Our elders told us stories about her adventures in the human realm, and I aspired to be like her. And I worked hard to become strong enough to pass through to the human realm and go on adventures like she did. Like Kyuubi, who roamed among the humans, Midnight continued, spitting out that final word. She then closed her eyes and turned her head away from the village, tears streaming down her cheeks. But then I found out about you, concerning the child Kyuubi adopted and raised as her own. A story about a boy who was so tortured by his own species that he eagerly accepted a demon as his mother. According to the stories, humans are terrified of demons. But I began to figure it out. You went to Kaio-chan because she was the first person to express your feelings to you. In a world as beautiful as this, filled with your own kind, it fell on her to show you the love you deserved. Midnight spoke before looking over to Naruto and kneeling down in front of him, looking away from her now. Please let me see, Midnight said, reaching forward slowly to touch Naruto's face. But she didn't touch him yet, waiting for his permission. Naruto continued to look away for a moment, the boy shaking now. He didn't want her to see, but he couldn't hold anything back from her. He trusted her for some reason. Midnight's brain was suddenly flooded with Naruto's members. She saw everything. How Naruto grew up, the abuse he faced, the hatred and isolation he endured before meeting Kyuubi, the sorrow, hopelessness, lovelessness, despair, fear, and agony. Midnight quickly pulled her hand back, her mouth agape in complete shock. But soon her expression changed to one of unspeakable rage. She quickly turned towards the village and bore her teeth, dropping down on all fours and starting a leap towards the village. But her jump was interrupted by a rough tug as Naruto clasped tightly around one of her two tails and stopped her in her tracks. Midnight immediately calmed down from her rage and gasped in despair. I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun. Why didn't you block it, Naruto? I'm truly sorry. Midnight pleaded in panic, wrapping her arms around his neck and burying her face into the side of his neck, while Naruto slowly wrapped his arms around her waist and drew her close to his body, holding her possessively in his grasp. Midnight was shaking, and after a while she looked up to see Naruto's wounds healing quickly, which surprised her because even most demons couldn't heal that fast. Within moments those slash marks were gone, leaving only a trail of blood staining his face and shoulder. I'm sorry, Midnight. However, you are unable to attack them. You're not tough enough, and I don't want to lose you, Naruto said solemnly. Midnight nodded, moving a paw up to trail her fingers along the side of Naruto's head, massaging his scalp. I know, that was a terrible mistake. I'm such a moron. I didn't think, and I could have hurt you as a result. I'm not supposed to be here. I have no right to be here. You deserve better, Midnight said shakily. But her words were cut short when she felt a rough squeeze around her waist and looked up to see Naruto glaring down at her, sending shivers up her spine. You're not going anywhere, Naruto stated firmly. Midnight looked up at him in surprise before nodding in understanding. Naruto's expression softened before he leaned down to place a tender kiss against her forehead. Midnight pulled back and turned her head back to the village of Konoha below them, her mind racing. Naruto squeezed her hand. Midnight stated with malice in her tone, I won't forgive them. Naruto nodded his head before suddenly picking Midnight up bridal style, eliciting a cute little squeak from the girl's throat. You won't have to. Events have already begun to unfold, but I have to do it my way. Will you stand by me? Naruto inquired as he walked to the edge of the monument, looking down at the village with Midnight clutched in his arms. Midnight looking up to Naruto with an adoring gaze. Always, she cooed before burying her face in his chest. And Naruto nodded, his gaze narrowed at the village. I'm going to end this cycle. Believe it, Naruto stated firmly before vanishing in a plume of flames.